Hey, what's up guys, Anders here with a quick BDO class guide. It's sort of a mini guide. I don't want to get too in-depth with each class because that's going to take a really long time. I've leveled most of the classes to 56 to check out their awakening weapons, and that's where you really should get to at least experience a class. Nothing I say here or any other in-depth video is really going to tell you if whether or not you're going to like a class, but I can at least give you an idea what the class does, what the class performs like in PvP and PvE. So hopefully that will help you kind of get a stepping stone into what class you want to start out in Black Desert Online. Now there's a bunch of classes in BDO, so we'll start with Valkyrie. Valkyrie is a female only class. It's a tanky class. It does really well in PvP because it can buff its party members and can also be really strong in one-on-one because it's just very tanky, has really good block, has really good burst damage as well. In PvE it has sort of low damage, but believe it or not, it has one of the best bursts in the game. The only unfortunate side of it is that for me it feels a little bit less mobile than other classes, but it's not too bad. You can kind of get used to it. Definitely the only class really to have a shield after its awakening, so it's if you like tanky classes and you're okay with playing a female class, of course, then Valkyrie is for you. It's not overly complex, but still has enough complexity to make it interesting. Now Warrior is similar to Valkyrie in the sense that it kind of performs decently in most of everything. In PvP it's very strong, stronger than Valkyrie, does way more damage and has just as much tankiness. In terms of mobility, it's better than Valkyrie in my opinion, but in terms of complexity and in terms of PvE grind, you're gonna get really bored because you're not gonna be using a lot of skills and it's just a little boring in my opinion. But it's a very good all-around class. You can't really go wrong with it. If you like the Warrior, if you like a great sword, you're basically gonna love Warrior. Now let's move on to Berserker real quick. Berserker I haven't played a lot of, but I have been killed by a lot of Berserkers, let me tell you. Berserkers have a ton of grabs, a ton of heals. Their sustain is insane. They're great on one-on-one PvP. They're great in siege PvP as well. Their mobility is actually really good after awakening as well. Their PvE grind is decent as well. It's a very strong class, probably one of the strongest classes in the game. It's just unfortunate that you have to play a giant race and you need to be okay with feeling very cramped in houses and just feeling like a lumbering idiot everywhere you go. That's my honest opinion. It has a bad rap because a lot of stupid people go with Berserker, but that's not to say that all people that play Berserker are stupid. It's just that seems like majority of people who are assholes play Berserkers. But if you want to roleplay that, go for it. If you also just like the idea of playing a giant race and with a cannon that's like Mega Man after its awakening, then that's the class for you. Now Striker just recently released. We don't know much about its awakening since it also just released in Korea, but from what we can tell, it's Striker pre-awakening, so before level 56. Basically martial artist class, very cool, kind of like a monk style. A little underwhelming on the damage in my opinion. It does well in PvE grind in my opinion. It has great sustain. Its complexity is one of the best because it's really complex. There's a lot of combos. Its mobility is also great. It just feels kind of boring to me. PvP is also pretty good. I feel like maybe there's some bugs with the class kit. Maybe they work that out in the future, but it just doesn't feel like you're really badass. Like, it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm punching these mobs and these players in the face and I'm grabbing them, but it just doesn't have that impact like, for example, Berserker does. In PvP, one-on-one, it's good. We don't really know about Siege PvP, but it seems it's going to be kind of like a Ranger or a Sorceress, so it depends. You'll have to be really good at the class to do really well. And in terms of its awakening, it gets these clones, kind of like stands, and they attack with you when you do certain skills, but the class doesn't really seem to change that much. Its mobility seems to go down a little bit. You supposedly get more power, but apparently in Korea there seems to be a bug where your clone isn't attacking with the same amount of power as you are, so your damage is kind of low and shitty. So a lot of people don't like Striker in Korea. A lot of people are kind of mixed here, hit or miss really with a Striker. But if you like martial arts, if you like that monk style, Striker is definitely a class to look into. It's still a decent class. It just takes a lot of work. Now Ranger is one of the first classes I ever leveled. Really strong class, especially in pre-awakening and awakening. Just know that Ranger unfortunately goes from being a ranged class to a melee assassin style class after it awakens awakens, but just know that just because you're getting a melee awakening doesn't mean that you don't actually use your bow as well. You use both pretty much all the time, and it's one of the classes that switches between its pre-awakening and awakening kit a lot. While you're waiting for the unfortunately long cooldowns of its awakening skills, you kind of switch over to the bow, also to kind of regenerate some mana. Just know that one downside of Ranger is that it's very potion dependent, so you're gonna need a lot of weight to carry all those potions to be efficient in your grind. PvE grind, it's really strong, it's really good. Sustain, unfortunately in my opinion, one of the worst sustains because you need to carry so many potions. Complexity, it's pretty complex. You can there's a lot of combos to learn. Feels really good when you execute them. Mobility is one of the best as well. Damage is insanely high, and in PvP 1-on-1 it does really well because it has a grab. It is able to burst down opponents really quickly, but in PvP and Siege it can kind of be hit or miss depending on your guild's composition and your role in the Siege. Now Sorceress is kind of like Ranger in a sense. It has insane damage, really good PvE grind. Its sustain is way better than Ranger. The only sustain issues I would think for Sorceress would be like health wise, but you even have a skill in your pre-awakening kit to actually gain back a lot of health if you have a large group of monsters. PvP, it's really strong as well, and Siege PvP is really strong. It's actually one of the strongest classes in the game, but also one of the most complex, and it's pretty mobile, but its complexity kind of makes people not want to stick around with Sorceress a lot because you can do so much with its pre-awakening and awakening kit, and kind of combine with different combos that some people don't really know what to do, and they kind of just get lost and just kind of go and play Wizard. Speaking of Wizard and Witch I'm going to put together because they're kind of like the same classes. They are, I guess, the easiest classes to pick up in Black Desert Online. That's not to say that's a bad thing. It's just there's a lot of people playing Wizard and Witch. So if you don't like being like everyone else, then I guess don't play Wizard, Witch, or Dark Knight because those are the most popular classes. The reason why they're so popular is because they're very low complexity, high damage, decent mobility, incredible sustain. Their PvE grind is one of the best, and they're really godly in PvP Siege as well. 1-on-1, I would say they're not godly. They're good, they're strong, but other classes, especially assassin classes, will just destroy wizards and witches who don't know what they're doing. Wizard is a little bit more offensive, has a grab after you awaken, has fire and water spells, and the witch has a block and way more defensive utility, and has earth and lightning spells. They're both very similar. The witch has slightly more range, and I prefer the witch over the wizard just because it has that defensive buff over the wizard. That's pretty much it. Dark Knight is recent class, recently released, really strong. I think one of the highest damaging classes in the game. Insane AoE after it awakens. Pre-awakening is pretty powerful too, but honestly, once you awaken, you're not going to be going back to your pre-awakening very much. It has AoE on cooldown and off cooldown, AoE everywhere. You don't even have to use crit gems because most of its skills are 100% crit rate, which is insane. So you just blow everything up with Dark Knight. Its complexity, I wouldn't say it's super simple like a Wizard Witch. It's definitely not complex, really. Its sustain is decent. Its PvE grind is one of the best. Its mobility is really good too, and its PvP 1-on-1 is good. Its Siege PvP is also good, but if you want to be really good at PvP, you're gonna have to put in a little bit more practice because even though you do a ton of damage, you also need to learn how to CC your opponent. Now moving on to Maehwa and Musa, I'll clump these together as well. They're pretty similar pre-awakening. They both use a blade and a horn bow. The bow is really not used for actual combat. It's really just for PvP, really, mostly. Really not used for anything else. But when they awaken, they both get a spear kind of weapon. The Musa gets a glaive with a fire elemental, AoE damage all over the place. It's really good sustained damage. These two classes actually have the best mobility in the game. They're the fastest classes in the game. Complexity wise, I think they're both very complex, but the PvE grind for Musa is amazing. The PvE grind for Maehwa, not so much. Unfortunately, because the Musa has so much AoE, the Maehwa kind of went the other way to just, instead of sustained damage, to more bursty damage, and that causes a lot of problems when you're trying to just clear mobs really fast. It's still good, don't get me wrong. A lot of people will say it's like one of the worst, but I don't believe that. I think honestly you just need to put a lot more gear behind the Maehwa to kind of get to where everyone else is, but once you do have that gear, it's actually pretty decent. PvP wise, Maehwa has the largest damage potential over the Musa, although the Musa is still very good if you play it well. Unfortunately, they both like a grab, so it's kind of hard to, for the Musa especially, if you don't burst down your opponent and they survive, you're gonna have a hard time. For the Maehwa, you should be able to burst down your opponent and kill them in one shot, so it should be fine. In terms of Siege PvP, assassins like the Musa, Maehwa, Ninja, Kunoichi, to an extent Tamer, all have a problem with Siege PvP because their roles aren't defined, but that doesn't mean that they're useless, so you would just be doing other things, not just attacking and killing a mass group of people like wizards do. But you have to be okay with that if you want to participate in guild wars, so yeah, not a really big deal. If you love the class, just know that in Siege PvP, you won't be as useful. In Ninja Kunoichi now, very similar to Musa Maehwa in terms of how it went. The Ninja got a lot of burst single target damage. They're one of the best one-on-one PvPers in the game. They have double grabs, they have insane burst potential, their complexity is pretty fucking high, and their PvE sustain is okay, I think, for both Kunoichi, and I think actually Kunoichi is better because she has insane health regeneration through her skills, and in PvE grind, Kunoichi is a little bit better because she has just so much more AoE damage. Just know that her AoE damage is low at the base but high multiplier, which means you need to have a lot of accuracy to really take advantage of her high damage potential. They're both amazing in mobility. They do lose a little bit of mobility after they awaken. You'll see that you go from being really fast to just really fast, but that's okay because you get a lot more damage out of it. And in Siege PvP, like the Musa Maehwa, you're gonna have to do other roles, although if you're really good Ninja Kunoichi, you can go invisible and you can kind of go behind enemy lines and kind of assassinate other players, but you have to be really good and be really well geared to actually do that and get the fuck out before dying. Tamer is one of the most complex classes in the game. It's also hated on for some reason. One week you'll hear Tamer needs to be nerfed, another week you'll hear Tamer needs to be buffed. It has a pet with Heilang, and the pet is actually pretty powerful. You can control when it attacks. It CCs your opponent. PvE grind is really good. You can kind of double pull because of your pet. It counts as another character, so instead of getting 8 limited mobs, you can attack it at one time. You have 16, which is really good. Its damage is again a little bit like Kunoichi. It's weak, but it's so fast paced and some decent multipliers that you can dish out a lot of damage continuously. But it's a lot of skills, it's a lot of combos you need to learn. In PvP 1-on-1, it's probably one of the best classes, honestly. In Siege PvP, again, kind of like the other assassin classes, it does have some utility, so that's kind of really good. Its CC potential is insane. One of the cooler classes in my opinion. And then we have the unannounced female class. We really have no idea any information about this class. We just got a silhouette and we can kind of maybe see that she has a short sword with a fan attached to it. We have really no idea, but they said that the devs wanted to put out this class in winter of this year for Korea, so we'll probably get it either at the end of the year or early next year, and we'll probably find out more information once it comes out in Korea. That's pretty much it. I tried to condense everything I could. It still probably came out a little longer than I wanted. Sorry about that, but let me know what you guys thought. Let me know what you think you want to play in the comments below. If you want to ask me any other questions, I'm usually live on Twitch at twitch.tv/AndersXIV, so you can catch me there. And that's pretty much all I got for you for Black Desert Online class guide. I'll see you in the next one.